It's summer, and that means it's time for summer reading. This may be the time of year where you are spending way more time with your family than usual, and you just need a break with a book. Or this may be a time of year that you're getting up earlier because the sun is rising earlier, you're staying up a little later because the sun's setting later, or you are going on vacation and you have time to read in the car or the plane or the place that you're going. I get so many questions about how I read so much, what books I recommend, that I wanted to put together a whole resource episode to help you read more and read better, whether it's business books, it's novel, beach reading, whatever it is. Wanted to put absolutely everything I had to say about reading and getting more out of your reading in one episode. My best tips, the tool I use, the sites I read, the podcasts I listen to, and the books I recommend for your business and for your summer. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm with me, Tara Swiger. This is episode 264, and let me tell you, I am going to be talking about a lot of links. You will find them all linked up at taraswiger.com/podcast 264. It's taraswiger.com/podcast 264. Now, usually I talk about running a business and mindset, and once a month I share what I'm reading. But I'll be honest with you, I'm recording this ahead of time before it's even June, so I can't tell you what I read in June. And I'm taking a break from the podcast to spend my summer with my foster kids and to spend more time reading. But no fear, you are still going to get episodes every single week because I'm, working ahead and because I planned way ahead. So I wanted to share with you before I am off for reading this summer what you can do to improve your summer reading, because there is no better way to go into summer than to talk about what I love best about summer, which is also the number one key to building my business, and that's books. So everything I know about my business, I learned through trial and error and experimenting. And I figured out what to try and how to experiment from books, from reading what other people had done, from getting advice, from learning marketing things. I've actually been talking about books on my website for small businesses since the very beginning. Since 2010, I've been recommending the books that have shaped my business. But I know a lot of us struggle with reading more, so today I'm going to help with that. We are going to talk about how to read more, how to find a book you'll like, resources of my favorite book lists, including my best books for your business, your mindset, your mental health. Now, before we get too far into it, I have to tell you, summer and reading have been linked in my mind ever since I participated in the library reading challenges. Do you remember these? The library would publish like a game board and you'd fill it in with the books you read, or for when you're younger, like the amount of time you spent reading or reading with a parent, and you'd win prizes. My library still does this today. They actually have an adult summer reading program that starts June 1st. So I'm going to go pick up one of those game boards and participate, right? And as I was thinking about this, I started remembering the Pizza Hut Book It program. I had to look it up because it was such a huge part of my childhood that it was just massive. It was one of the first things Jay and I ever bonded over. And I had to look it up because winning a pizza by reading books and getting the fabulous holographic pin was like the highlight of my year. And it's just about the only sport I ever competed in. So while I was writing this episode, I went to look it up, and Book It is still around. I linked to the site in the show notes. It has tons of good resources, reading tracker, activities to get kids into reading for both you and your kids. So you can sign up actually at the Book It site for a summer reading program, and they're going to send you weekly emails with reading suggestions and projects you can do with your family. So if you are wondering what to do with your kids this summer, that is just a random side thing that may be really helpful. The Book It Summer Program. Linked up in the show notes. Now, as I record this, it is late May, and I've already read more than 75 books this year in 2019. And so I get asked a lot, how do you read so much? And a few years ago, I actually put together a guide. Again, this is linked in the show notes, or you can just Google Tara Swiger, how to read 100 books in a year. You'll find it linked up in the show notes at taraswiger.com/podcast 264. And I'll summarize the best points for you here. The key to reading more is to read what you like, always have plenty of books on your list and in your hands, and to stop when you want. The thing that so many adults struggle with is to read what they like But dude, give yourself permission to read what feels good, even if it's not what you think you should be reading. Maybe you love YA fantasy. Maybe you love romances. Maybe you love comics. It really doesn't matter. Reading anything helps you get in the habit. And if you want to be in the habit of improving your business through books, then you got to just be in the habit of reading, period. So you can use the habit of reading what you like to build on it and read more books that will actually educate you on what you want to learn, like business or psychology or mindset or parenting. You also have to have enough books so that you can immediately pick up something new or when you get sick of one. So that means enough on your to-read list and enough in your actual home or on your Kindle, like that you can physically turn on a new book as soon as you want to. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I bring home anywhere from 5 to 15 books at a time from the library, and I'm going to the library every single week. So in the rest of this episode, we're going to cover how to find more books for your list, how to keep track of the books on your list, and how to find more of what you like. And finally, you really need to let yourself stop when you want to stop. This is such a big thing. Maybe you put the book down for just a few days, or maybe you wait until you're more awake, or maybe you just don't like it and you stop it altogether. But if you force yourself to slog through stuff you're not enjoying or stuff you're feeling too tired to read, you're gonna not associate reading with pleasure, and you're not gonna read as much. Life is too short to read books you don't enjoy. It's like my number one motto. You can put it on my gravestone. Forget anything business. My motto is life is too short to read books you don't enjoy. So let's talk about how to find books you actually like. First, did you know that your library has a reader advisory? Before I even say that, let me say I'm going to talk a lot about libraries. Having a library card is free. It's accessible. I have lived in incredibly rural places, and I've always been able to get to a library within 15 to 20 minutes. And you know, if you're in a very rural place, 15 to 20 minutes is like good, right? That's like where you're going for the grocery store. So your library is free. It's accessible to everybody. They have programs for everything. And even the smallest, tiniest library is connected to a network of libraries that will have the books you're looking for and have the resources you need. So whether you have kids or you have elderly parents or you have a disability, your library has programs and things that will help you be able to make use of your library and all of the different resources, both online and in print. So I cannot say that enough, especially as we come up to summer. Going to the library once a week and actually having a thing to do will like save your sanity. With kids or without kids, going to the library each week is sanity saving. So let's talk about, do you know that your library has reader advisory? So they actually have lists of books on different topics and different like nonfiction subjects or fiction subjects. Like if you like this, you might like this. There's a whole list of books that are about yarn shops, like mysteries set in yarn shops or romances set in yarn shops or bookstores or things where knitting is involved in this like solving of the mystery. So if you know what you like, your librarian can suggest books that you'll like. They might send you to a different librarian who specializes in that. So they publish those lists, like mine has them in little flyers you can take. They also have amazing online resources. One of my favorites through my library that I just found recently from my library main site is called Books and Authors. And your library has to have access to it for you to be able to see it. But if you look around your site and you're looking for something called Reader Advisory or What Should I Read Next, or look for something called Books and Authors, I actually link up to my local version of it. It's associated with Nashville, so it's like bna.something.com. But I've linked it up in the show notes. Or look on your library site. You can look up any book on the Book and Author site, and it will tell you, the author is a clickable link, so you can click and see more books by that author, but it will also tell you more books like that book. And it will also tell you an idea of the subject matter, like it's a mystery, or it's a thriller, or it's a romance, or it's historical fiction, or it's contemporary fiction. And then it'll say things like pets, or dog, or domestic abuse, like the different subject matters covered even in a novel will be listed there. So A, you can avoid things that might be triggers for your anxiety or panic. And B, you can figure out, I really like thrillers that have an unreliable narrator. Or one of the things I love is crime fiction, like in Europe, right? So like if there's someone in Scotland who's solving a mystery, I want to read it if it's nonviolent, if it's like a cozy mystery. You don't have to know that. You can just pick a book you like, even if it's been years since you liked a book. Search in books and authors, it'll suggest more books. Then you can go to your library, check them out, see if you like them. If you don't, pick a different book. Find more like it. So that is one really easy way to just get recommendations of things you may like. Another great way to find books that you are likely to like is to find reviewers you like and read what they suggest. So if I have talked about 2 or 3 books that you enjoy, then you will know, you can probably trust me to point you to more books that you enjoy. But if you find that you don't like the stuff I'm reading, then you shouldn't read more of what I'm reading. Maybe you really agree with my business book taste, but you don't like the novels I'm reading. Then don't listen to me. Find somebody who's doing what you like, who's reading what you like. So one of my favorite ways to do this is on Goodreads, goodreads.com. Go to your favorite book page. Now, from there may be lists with your book that have other books like it, but not always. But look at the reviews. See who's reviewed it and what they said about it. If you've already read the book, then read several of the reviews. If you agree with somebody about the points they're making about the book, click on their name and you can see their other reviews. So I don't always read people's reviews before I've read the book, but I will look at their star rating. So for example, and I'm going to link it up, I like a reviewer named Emily May. She reads a lot of the same kind of novels I read. Not a lot of nonfiction, but she reads the novels I read. And if she's given a high star review to a book, I'll go in and check it out. If she's given 2 or 3 stars, I might wait on it. Now I might end up loving the books that she's only given 2 or 3 stars to, but it helps me sift through all that there is to read by looking at what somebody who I know reads a kind of books I like, likes. Super easy way to do it. So you can also find reviewers you like in newspapers. I know that seems old school, but a lot of them have their articles online, or you can do online sites like Book Riot or Slate are 2 that I go to. And if a certain reviewer liked a book, I know I'm going to like it. So I don't listen to what everybody on the site says, but what specific people who have my same site. There's also the New York Review of Books. You can follow reviewers there and see what they like. The LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, all the big newspapers have book reviews. Many of their book reviews are online. So you can find things. And what you're looking for is somebody who has a similar sensibility to you. Because every book, even the books that you absolutely hate, has somebody who absolutely loves it. So you just want to pay attention to the people who have similar taste as you. Now, another way to find books you like is to check out lists, either that are about the topics you like or by people you trust. So I really highly recommend Anne Bogle's Summer Reading Guide at Modern Miss Darcy. You can Google that, or you can head over to my show notes and just click the link for the summer reading guide. I am actually choosing to read mostly this summer books from her guide. You can also do something like read along with a challenge, like I'm doing the Read Herder Challenge, which is linked up. It's over at the Book Riot site, the Read Herder Challenge. It's making me broaden the kinds of things I read. You can also check out a massive list of resources for diverse books. If you want to diversify what you're reading, you can find them at diversebooks.org. Under their resources, they have tons of lists for all different kinds of things. And of course, I share my favorite books every month here on the podcast and over on my site. You can search my site for reading, or I link up all 6 years of reading posts in my show notes. Yes, I have been talking about what I'm reading almost every month for 6 years. It's all linked up in the show notes. I've also put together lists of my top books, because every month I talk about what I'm reading. Not everything is like a top book. A lot of the stuff is like, yeah, this is okay. But the very best books for specific subjects I've put together in lists. So you can find all the lists at amazon.com/shop/Tara Swiger. It's just a really easy way for me to link to the direct book I'm talking about, so you don't have to go searching for it. And it's easy for me to update from my phone. So if I really love a book and I'm in the middle of holding a baby, I can update it. So I have a list for my favorite business books, my favorite Etsy business books, which are going to be for craft-based businesses, and also my favorite trauma and mental health books. I also have favorite parenting books, favorite comics for teens that are not teens, kids that are 10 years and older, So if you want to see the top books in any of the main categories I read in, I'm also going to do one for my favorite novels of the last few years. You can find that at amazon.com/shop/Swiger or in the show notes. Now, a couple of you, when I talked about this on Instagram, asked, how do I find books for kids? So you can help your kid find more books they like if first you help them dig into what they like about stories. So I like to ask people for 3 to 5 stories that they've loved. Now, if your kid is not a big reader, guess what? Books and video games are also stories that they love. So not just what is a story you've loved, but what did you love about it? So help them come up with 3 to 5 that they've loved and then dig in deeper. This is a great way to help them find books they love, and it will also help you talk about books and talk about reading and help your kid become more literate in recognizing their own tastes. Another thing that's great for kids is nonfiction. Sometimes kids just want to nerd out and learn everything there is to know about a Tyrannosaurus Rex or how a rocket ship works or where the planets are. And kids will go into such amazing detail like you don't even want to hear about it anymore. So if your kid is into literally anything, even movies, video games, anything, there are books about it. There are whole books full of data and nerd stuff about the making of any kind of movie, or even making movies, or making video games. So you can get books like that at the library. And if you, like lots of parents that I talk to, and like I was raised, you have a specific reading time each day, especially during the summer, where they have to read 20 minutes or an hour. Having books that are about even just nerdy topics like how was this movie made gives them something to do in that 20 minutes, and it keeps them from saying, I don't like reading. So my big belief is you want to give kids anything that gets them reading, even if it's not something like you approve of. It's not like literature. It at least gets them into the habit of thinking, oh, I could look something up in a book, not just on Google. The other thing I have to say, because I'm a big believer in this, is comics count. Comics are a great way to get a reticent reader into sitting there with something in their hand and flipping the pages. And you can find graphic novels at your library. Now let me explain in case you're not familiar with all the lingo. A graphic novel is a collected issues. It's all the collected issues in a story arc of a comic. So if you go to your comic book shop and you buy just a comic off the shelf that's kind of thin like a magazine, that's a single issue. Or one way to think about it is it's a single episode of a TV show. But you can get them bound together at your comic book shop or at your library, and it's multiple issues or multiple episodes into one season of stories. So you can get them at your library. If you're not sure if your kid's going to like it or not, check them out there, totally free. Once you know you like a comic, you can start buying it in individual issues, or you can buy the graphic novel at your local comic shop. And if you don't have a comic shop, you can even get comics on your Kindle through Comixology subscription. I've linked it up. First, though, really go to your comic shop. They're going to be nice. But if you've got a Kindle and you don't have one towards you, a Comixology subscription lets you read tons of comics for free. So a few of my favorite comic books that are appropriate for anyone. I would say some of them are good for 8 and up, some of them are good for 10 and up. You might want to flip through it and decide on yourself because you have different guidelines for what's appropriate for your kids. My absolute favorite comic of all time is Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. I'm going to struggle to not go into how amazing it is, but it's great. It has jokes. Her best friend, Nancy, is a knitter. So, I mean, your kid already knows somebody who's a knitter, likely, if you're listening to this show. So the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, I've linked up volume 1 in the show notes, so you can start at the beginning. The Lumberjanes is another one that's really great for anybody, probably 7 and up. It's like a little mysteries. They solve mysteries while these girls are at summer camp. It's got a whole bunch of different kinds of girls in it, and boys love it too. It's written by Noelle Stevenson, who is the creator of the new She-Ra on Netflix. So A, watch She-Ra. B, read Lumberjanes. She also wrote Nimona, which I'm in the middle of reading now, which is about a supervillain. I don't know what age range it's appropriate for yet because I haven't finished it. Also, check out, if your kid loves the Marvel movies, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is the one that's appropriate for younger readers. There's a lot of different Spider-Man titles. You're looking for Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I linked it up in the show notes. Also, if you liked the movie Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales, who's the main Spider-Man in that, There is a novel, or there's many books that all the way from your earliest reader into your YA reader. So I link up a novel that's like a mid-grade reader, and he has a comic. So I link up to volume 1 for that. So if you loved Into the Spider-Verse, you're going to love Miles Morales. Also, if you need suggestions, ask me on Instagram. So that's all I'm going to talk about, kids books. I know not everybody is looking for kids books. I know it's mostly 2- and 3-year-olds in my life, so I don't get to do a lot of expanding into novels for kids. But I love helping you or anybody in your life find books. Do you have an aunt that wants to read more? Does your partner want to read more? I love helping you find books. I not so secretly want to be a librarian, if only I could do it from home in my PJs. So tag me in your post on Instagram. I'm at Tara Swiger. Tara Swiger. You know how to spell that. It's all over this podcast, wherever you're listening or watching now, or send me a DM. I think maybe I might need to do, if I get a lot of requests, I might need to do a book recommendation podcast, like a whole new show. I don't know. I get new show ideas all the time. We'll see. But send me your requests. I love to help people find books. So, the next thing we need to talk about is, okay, fine, great. You've got 1 million books. That's not your problem. It's how to find more books. Or now that you've done some of the things I talked about, you have 1 million books. How do you keep track of it all? So I have a couple tools that I use that I love. The first one is Goodreads. So Goodreads has reviews, it has social aspects, it has all kinds of things. The main thing I use Goodreads for is to keep track of what I want to read. I have a shelf called Want to Read. Anytime I hear a book anywhere, I add it to Want to Read all of the time. So you can use Goodreads to track what you are reading, to put books on certain shelves, like virtual shelves of what the book is about. You can use it to track, like, I keep all my business books in one section and all my books about women's empowerment in another section. But even when I'm not doing any of that, I'm putting my Want to Read on it. So the other thing to keep in mind is, because you need to always have something available to read, I put everything, I never worry about it getting too big. I have no goal to read all the books on my to be read shelf. My goal is to have an endless to be read shelf, so I'm always excited and I always have something new in front of me. I never want to run out of books I'm excited about. Now, you just go to Goodreads, you set up an account. It can attach to your Facebook account. I have it set to not send updates to Facebook because I just don't need to, but you can set it up with Facebook or you don't have to. Now, the second tool I use all the time are library holds and requests. And these are slightly different, and I didn't know this was possible until just recently. So a few times a week, usually when I'm waiting somewhere or I need a break from my work, I open up my Goodreads to read list, and I open up my library catalog, which, because I go to it so often, my iPhone and browser's already like short link to it. They suggest it as a bookmark all the time. So I open up my library catalog, I open up Goodreads, and I place a hold on a few books that I've recently added to my Goodreads list, or is on a specific topic I'm excited to learn about. Now, holds at my library top out to 15 books. So what you do is you look up a book, and over on the side in my library catalog, it says place hold. I just have to log in with my library ID and my last name. So you probably have a library ID if you have a library card. You just need to figure out what your ID and password is. Most people I've talked to, it's their library card number and then their last name. But yours might be your first and last name or something like that. So you put a hold, they pick it up off the shelf or they get it from another library and they hold it there for you. And then they alert you when your holds come in. You don't even have to walk around the library, you just pick it up. When we had the babies, that's what I would do. Jay would stay home with the baby, I'd run out, I'd go, I'd pick it up, I'd come home, or I'd go in with the baby in a baby wearer, and of course the baby wakes up and is cranky, I could just go get my books from the desk, from the person. I didn't have to like go and look everywhere and pull them off the shelf. So if you don't have time to go to the library, place holds, then just pick up your holds. I top it out a lot, and I found sometimes it stresses me out when too many books come in at one time. I don't have time to read them all in my 2-week period. So now I stop myself at 5 to 10. And if there are books that your library doesn't have, when you look them up, there's no results for them. I just discovered that my library has a request book page. Yours does too. So what you do is it's a form you fill out to request that the library buys the books. Or this is really great for books that haven't been released yet. Like you hear about a book, I talk to you in a minute about a book that's going to come out August 30th. And you're like, well, I want to get that. You add it to your Goodreads to-do list, but you don't want it to get buried. You can go over to your request page. You fill out your name, your library card number, probably your email address or your phone number, and then the book title and author. And what's great is if it hasn't been released yet, you basically get to be at the top of the hold list. So books that are huge, like many of the top bestsellers of the summer, as soon as they hit your library, they already have holds on them, like 20 holds on them, because people have already said that they want to read them. So when you fill out the request page, it helps you get at the top for those new books, which maybe you don't care about. But the other thing is that if it's a book your library is really not going to carry, like I request all kinds of crazy quilting books that my library is probably not going to buy for their permanent collection, but they will borrow from other libraries' permanent collections. So I just got a quilt book in from the Knoxville library. My local library isn't going to carry some book about improv quilting, but they'll get it from me from another library, one that's not connected in our catalog. So that's the holds and the requests. Now, the other tool I love is Libby. So Libby is an app that attaches to your library card that lets you get ebooks and audiobooks from your library directly from your phone. You never have to go to the library. I have shared the link in the show notes. It's super easy to set up. If you have your library card, it will connect with your catalog. You can put holds on things, and your library likely only has 1 or 2 copy of things, so you might have to wait, but then it pops in your Libby app. The ebook, you can read it in your Libby app. You can send it to your Kindle app. You can listen to the audiobook in the app. So great. I absolutely love it. I never really listened to audiobooks until I started using Libby, because it's like, how do I get them? I don't want to buy them. It's a whole other app on Audible. Or, of course, you can listen to Audible and buy the books from Amazon and have them directly in your Audible app. The other thing I love for keeping track, getting new books, you know, I talked about my library. I love my library. I get like 98% of my books there. But the other way I get new novels, especially hardcover novels, is through the Book of the Month Club. Linked it up in the show notes. It lets you get new books before they're released, and if you want to own your books. I have a friend who insists on owning the books, and library books gross her out. So Book of the Month Club is such an affordable way to get new hardcover novels, and you get to choose what you get. It's not like they send you a book that you don't want. You get to choose from 4 to 5 picks for the month's new books, and then also often they have picks from months back, books that have been popular, and you can skip any month you want. So you don't have to be charged. I skip when I don't see something there I like. I don't want an extra book coming in my house, so I skip the month. And if you sign up from the link that I put in my show notes, I will get a free book. So I would super appreciate it. It won't cost you anything extra. If you're going to get Book of the Month, use the link in my show notes. I say that because somebody told me they didn't know I had a link they could use. And I'm like, oh, I wish I would have used it. So it's in my show notes. Now, so that is really how I manage to read so much. I find books that I like using the resources I gave you. I keep track of it in Goodreads. I reserve it at my library or on Libby, or I buy it through the Book of the Month Club. Or occasionally, whenever I'm in a town, I go to the indie bookstore. I open up my Goodreads to be read list, and if I see something that I know I wasn't able to get at the library, or it has a long hold, or I just really want it, I buy it from an independent bookstore. Now, other reading bits of my reading life, I have to share with you. I've been listening to 2 reading podcasts all the time. When I'm too stressed to listen to a business podcast, or I have too many things to do to listen to a business podcast, I'm running errands, or the babies are driving me crazy and I need an adult break, I get in the car and I listen to Anne Bogle's podcast, What Should I Read Next? She has the most amazing podcast voice. I'm not just a little jealous of her smooth, wonderful voice. And she talks to readers each week, just normal readers, about books they loved, books they didn't like, and then she makes 3 more recommendations for them. I love it. There's another book recommendation podcast by Book Riot called Get Booked. They do a bunch of people every episode, and they don't talk to the person live. But if you just want book recommendations, they do a bunch every episode, way more. What Should I Read Next? Just kind of one person at a time. I always love the people she talks to, and I nerd out. The other book podcast I love is Reading Glasses. It's a podcast about book life and book culture. So the things I've been talking about so far, like not specific books, but like nerding out about reading, they talk about everything from book lights to library holds. They also have interviews with authors, and they do a great job of interviewing a whole bunch of diverse authors. I also have found several books I like through their podcast. I think I have similar reading tastes with one of the hosts. So it's Reading Glasses. I've linked them both up. That is how to find books, how to keep track of books, a lot of my favorite resources. Now I'm going to share my own summer to read list because I know a lot of you like to read along with me. We can talk about it over on Instagram. This summer, I've decided to focus on the newest books, and I'm reading a lot of fiction because I anticipate having foster kids with me all summer, and they will be home with me, literally, with me. And so instead of trying to learn something new in my business or read a lot of dense nonfiction, I found novels are the things I can get through when I'm distracted, when I'm stressed, when I'm tired, even if I haven't slept enough. Good propulsive novel will keep me going and still give me that rest that reading gives me. So I focused on new fiction, most of them from Anne Bogle's summer reading guide list that I linked up in the show notes. So I'm focusing on those, and I'm focusing on ones that I literally already own that are on my bookshelf that have been waiting for me. So I found that in the first couple hectic weeks of a foster care placement, or really anything hectic in my life, it's hard to keep the habit of going to the library. So I just read books from my own shelf. When we got the first baby, I ended up returning all of my books that I had out from the library and just making a note in Goodreads that I wanted to get them again later, and just reading books from my own shelf because getting her in and out, getting to the library, I just didn't have a schedule in the first several weeks she was here. So I just focused on what was on my shelves because then I didn't have to stress about due dates. So this list is only those I either currently have or I have on reserve at the library. Otherwise, I could list a million books I want to read. So right now I mentioned I'm reading Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. Oh, by the way, all of these are linked up in my show notes. You can find them at your library or you can find them at your local indie bookstore. I've just linked to their Amazon link because that way you know what specific book I'm talking about. Also, you can get them on Amazon. I earn a small, tiny commission, which just allows me to buy new books or buy stuff for the baby's room. So Nimona by Noelle Stevenson is what I'm reading now. I also just started last night, and it's amazing. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. It's one that Anne Bogle recommends all the time on her book podcast, and so it's been on my list. Oh my gosh, it's crazy and good, and so much more. I'm just not going to go on because we could talk forever. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. On my shelf, also recommended by Anne Bogle's podcast all the time, is Still Life by Louise Penny. It's been one I've wanted to read for a while. Bird King by G. Willow Wilson. This book came out just a couple months ago, and I pre-ordered it actually because I wanted to support the author. She is the author and creator of the new Miss Marvel, which is the first Muslim American superhero ever. Her name's Kamala Khan, the Miss Marvel is, and those comics I loved so much. So I also read one of G. Willow's first novels before she worked on Ms. Marvel, and this is her new novel called Bird King. I don't know anything about it. I pre-ordered it because I love her. Also, Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. I read recently several Kate Atkinson, several of her Jackson Brody mysteries, and her book Transcriptionist, which I loved. I talked about in a recent episode. I'll link that up. This is another series, her Life After Life. It's got a couple books in it. So I'm going to try Life After Life. I got it from the used bookstore. And I might also read another one of her Jackson Brody novels because she has a new one coming out this summer. So I need to read the fourth one, and then she's coming out with her fifth one. You can read those out of order, though. I realize I'm talking way more about each book than I intended to. Also, from the Book of the Month Club, I have Before She Knew Him by Peter Swanson. That's a new release. And then the books that are on my reserve list that have not come in for me yet. Brand new this summer. Waiting for Tom Hanks by Carrie Winfrey. It's about somebody who loves romantic comedies and Tom Hanks. The River by Peter Heller, which is like a action-adventure outside novel. The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. It's a domestic thriller. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. It's a nonfiction account of a few of her clients, and then also what she experiences when she's in therapy with her own therapist. The Better Sister by Alifair Burke, which isn't out yet. And really anything by Megan Abbott. I've linked up several of Megan Abbott's books. I've talked about them in recent podcasts. My library has all of them, and I've enjoyed every one I've read, except for her noir, but I enjoy her mystery. So as I'm waiting on these other ones to come in, if I read everything in my house, I will go get anything by Megan Abbott. So that is what is on my summer reading list. That is how I manage reading. I have, if you're like, well, I just want to read business books or psychology books or mindset books this summer, I really want to focus on that. I have links to my top business books over at amazon.com/shop/Tara Swiger, or you can find the direct link to the different lists over on the podcast show notes. That's taraswiger.com/podcast264. Thank you so much for joining me for this epic reading episode. I hope this helps you read more, get more out of your reading life, and just enjoy it more. Thank you so much for listening. Come ask for a book recommendation from me over on Instagram. I'm at Tara Swiger. You can post on your own account. Just be sure you tag me or send me a DM and I will suggest a book for you. Thank you so much for listening and have an enthusiastic, book-filled summer.